Welcome to the Beyond Bound Coach and AD Professional Development Series, a weekly online professional development for athletic administrators and coaches. Join us as 6 former ADs now employed by Bound and with over 100 years of combined experience discuss topics important and beneficial to ADs and coaches. Join us on this journey of professional growth. We're here to help you take your coaching and athletic administration to the next level and beyond.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Bound. Great to join the other Bound directors here this morning on March 8th is the date that we're recording this. So wishing you all the best. Thanks for joining us this morning for another quick hit of professional development put together by ADs and coaches, designed specifically for ADs and coaches out there. So again, just a reminder what our goal is with Beyond Bound. We're trying to create a kind of a quick hitting, unique professional development experience and series for ADs and coaches that we hope can be practical and be something you can grab onto with a topic that matters and put it into practice right away. How does this fit into your program? How does it fit in the current conversations or practices you've got going on? But something you can just plug and play from us real quick. We don't want to take a lot of your time because we understand you're busy folks. You're out there impacting young people through the platform of educational athletics, and we want to support that, but not get in the way of it as well. So thanks for joining us, and let's jump into today's topic. And got to be honest with you, I was struggling with what I was going to do here, and I was kind of mixing up some things what we had talked about, what I had talked about, and I remembered that the last presentation I gave, back at the end of January, was on developing standards of excellence, why I thought they're important, and then the process we went through in developing those. And I remember actually saying during that episode, well, man, I'm kind of starting in the middle here because this all came after our vision and mission work, our talk about what our culture is about, who we are, what we're about, what we're trying to accomplish. And I kind of started in the middle to back into that process last time. So I'm actually going to hit rewind on that and go back to the beginning of this whole culture building conversation that we had as a staff when I was the AD at Kennedy, and go back to how we even got started. And so this is actually part 1 then. I've already given you part 3, and I'll do part 2 next time. So how's that for out of whack? But that's about, I don't know how you guys feel about being ADs, but quite frankly, that's the way I AD'd the best. I did things out of order.
Aaron, this is like Star Wars. You're the prequels to Star Wars right here.
Hey, you know what? There's a lot of truth to that when it comes to being an AD anyway. There's a whole Beyond Bound topic right there. How does Star Wars correlate to being an AD? There's somebody pick up on that one. Anyway, I digress. So we'll go back, and again, what I'm going to hit then today is how do we even start that conversation and move down that path towards building our culture? And really, that's what this whole thing is about. When you talk about culture building, you're talking about defining who you are, what you want to stand for, either as an individual or as a group or a system, organization, a team. And then you start talking about, okay, so what are the skill sets and the characteristics and what we're going to be about that drives us forward towards making that happen, making that culture happen. And that's where terms like vision and mission and standards of excellence and core values, and that's where that stuff comes from, and that's what defines you. So talk a bit here today about how that conversation even got started in the process maybe I went through. If you've never been through that process before, maybe this helps spark that thought process for you. Maybe it's been a while since you've done this, and maybe this conversation maybe re-sparks that, hey, we got to revisit that and kind of redefine some things. We've got some new people in our coaching ranks here or within our organization that we need to maybe get up to speed, and maybe things have changed a bit. So anyway, hope it leads that conversation. So how do we spark that conversation? What's the process I went through? Because if you're going to start to set a vision and a mission for your program or for your team, start setting that culture for your team, you have to know what you're about. You have to kind of ask some questions about yourself and kind of put that mirror up and look at the reflection and say, okay, who are we as a program? What is it we're trying to accomplish through our program? When we're said and done, what is it our athletes, when they're done playing for us, whether they play for us 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and they walk across the stage and go on to take on life, what are they taking with them? Because they're not taking the uniform, they're not taking their soccer ball, they're not taking their basketball. That they're taking with them the skill sets, the experiences, and what they've learned through those experiences is what they're taking with them. So you have to have a conversation about, well, what is it they're taking So I sent out a Google form to my coaches, and I only gave them 8 slots, because someone could start talking, for a long time. So I made them do some thinking about what are the top 6 to 8 things that when your kids are done playing for you, they graduate from your sport or your activity. If you're a director out there listening to this, what are the 8 skills, characteristics, tools, skill sets that you want your athletes to possess to take with them as they take on the rest of their life? So I asked my coaches to submit that to me ahead of time before any of our conversations. And then what I did with that information, I collected all that, gathered all that, and then I started a big spreadsheet up, and I had all their responses over here in a column, and then I just started creating columns. At the top of each column, I'd kind of put a common theme. So anything that had to do with work ethic, I had a work ethic column, and I had a teamwork column, and I had a time management column, and as the theme developed, I just kept adding new columns, and I would drag and drop their comment underneath each of those headings wherever it fit best. So anything that fit work ethic, I drop it in that column on the spreadsheet. Anything that fit team, being a great teammate, or learning how to be a great teammate, or being a great role player, whatever those things are, I would drop those things into those columns so that I was tallying them up. I wasn't getting rid of them because I wanted to have, I wasn't condensing them. I wanted to have an idea of, hey, developing a great work ethic was mentioned 18 times, out of my 23 coaches. I wanted to know that, so I could share that and have that be part of the conversation. So after I did that, and this was a late spring. I'll tell you when I did this was late spring, because we were gonna spend the next year in our coaching conversations and coaches meetings, developing this and then harnessing this, and through this whole process. And I knew one of the things I wanted to do was instead of just having my regular, hour and a half kind of coaches informational meeting that you have in every fall with your coaching staff, I sent all that stuff to them in an email. I said, hey, make sure you read this. This is all the do's and don'ts and policy stuff. I don't want to waste our time on that. And I set aside in the springtime, after I asked them all these things, I said, we're going to take this on and build our vision and mission and start setting our culture at a retreat on a Saturday in August. And so I got them off campus from 8 a.m. to noon on a Saturday. And we went to Hills Bank here in town. They got a big meeting room that they let us use for free. And I got them off campus in a long extended period of time. We could sit down and dig in and have great conversations. And so we did that on that Saturday in August on that. And what I did there, when I tallied them up, the one thing I forgot to mention there, you see there, I did this word cloud visual, because I wanted to be able to give them something that was a visual of what was most important to us. So those word clouds where you've got all the words to kind of mix and match, and the more time a word gets mentioned, the bigger that word is. And so I took my tallies and I typed all those topics in there, or those headings like work ethic and be a great teammate, time management, etc., sacrifice, and obviously I put the number of tallies in there, so the most common responses were bigger on that word cloud. And there's a lot of free ones you can use out there. Just type in free word cloud generator, and you can, one will pop up there for you. So then we sat down on that 4 hours and we tried to hash these things out. Now there's a lot of different definitions out there of vision and mission. This is kind of what I thought about and how I approached it in that meeting. But we started having our conversation, and we started on, let's make sure we define who we are. Let's make sure we're all on the same page on who we are. This is what we're about. This is why we do what we do as coaches, and that's going to be our vision. And that third bullet down there, that every athlete future ready, is where we landed. Now, I'll be honest, we also wanted our school district had a school-wide vision statement. It was every learner future ready. And so we really looked at that for a long time and said, all right, we should have some alignment with the district, but does that fit what we're talking about? Does that fit who we want to be, our vision? And as we kept talking, everything we talked about was, we want our kids through participating in our program, we want them to be able to take the skill sets that they learn from us and be able to apply them to live their fullest, best life, to maximize their potential after high school. So our goal, our vision became that every athlete who is a part of our program, when they're done, is going to have the skill sets necessary to be successful and take on whatever's next in their future. So we really bought into that idea of our vision then is every athlete future ready. And we were using, again, that word cloud, the things they submitted to me, as the driver of developing that. Second thing then was the mission. Okay, so if that's who we are, that's what we want to be, that's what we're going to be about, what's going to drive us every day to get that done? And again, we're using that word cloud and all those characteristics and traits they submitted, and I'm splitting them up into groups. And the one thing I would tell you in that process is don't let them pick their groups. Otherwise they're going to get off into their little cliques of who they're comfortable with, and they aren't going to challenge one another. They aren't going to get to know one another. And we've talked about that before. So I moved them to different tables around the room, and I set the groups so that I had different coaches talking with one another than usually would, if that makes sense there. So we're having these conversations, and this took a long time to come up with that statement that you see there in all caps. But our mission is to daily build positive belief in the competitive spirit, working to pursue the best version of ourselves every day. We kept coming back to competition or that competitive spirit, and the things you learn through competition is what's driving you to get better. And so it took us a long time to land on that wording for our mission, but that's what drives us every day. If we're building that positive belief in what competition, that competitive spirit truly is about, then we'll be teaching them the skill sets they need to be successful after high school. That's where we landed. It took us all of those 4 hours that day to have those conversations and wordsmith and disagree on this and agree on that. And that was the process we went through, but that's what started setting us all being on the same page as a coaching staff on our culture, who we are, what we're about, what we're trying to accomplish. And then they could take those conversations into their individual programs after that. So that was part one, or step one. What I'll do when I come back up, I roll back around in August, is I'll take these things on. We then turned around and said, okay, so let's take that word cloud and what are the things we agree on the most, and how can we put those together in a context that makes sense, that's repeatable, it's easy to remember, et cetera. So I'll talk about that process next time around. All right. So I'm going to turn this over to you guys, and I'm curious about you guys' processes. Certainly this is one way to do it. I know you guys have all had other culture setting conversations with your programs, and so I want to hear you guys' thoughts. So Joey, we'll head north and you'll kick us off on the discussion.
Well, this is good stuff, Aaron. I think we've said this, all of us have said this at one time or another. I wish I'd had this stuff when I was a younger AD, because this is truly where it should start. And not something that we should start at the tail end of our career, but at the front end of our career. Having said that, some of the things that we did as a group, during COVID, we had, everybody had lots of downtime. Yeah. We're at home, we're distance learning, we're whatever. I got all my coaches together and we went through the 3D coaching program. We do the online portion 1 week, we do one lesson. Then at the beginning, like on a Monday, we'd come back and we'd get together on a Zoom and we'd discuss that lesson. And what I did with my coaches there was every week someone else had to lead the discussion. So I got them involved. I got everybody to see each other's personality and hopefully learn about each other's program a little bit through that process. Another thing I've done with individual coaches is we've done the Winning Leader Academy with Jeremy Boone. That's a great process because it does exactly what you have suggested here. You really need to hold that mirror up and look at yourself and ask yourself some hard questions and define what is that personal mission statement. What is your promised land statement? And hone in on that and get something short, sweet, and concise that people can relate to, they can remember, and they can apply as they go forward. But that's great stuff.
I like that, Joey. Great ideas, and you're right. It'd be nice if we had this all earlier in our careers, but slow learners are still great learners, right?
They're learning.
All right. All right. Mr. Peterson, you're up.
Yep. Yeah, this is an awesome topic and near and dear to my heart. I think I really felt like I started becoming a better coach and a better AD when I say it all the time, but just when I knew who I was, I knew who we were, everything became easier. All my hard conversations became easier because of this common language, Aaron, that you're talking about. I mean, essentially, that's what you're talking about, right? At the end of the day, you're going to have a common language for your kids. You're going to lose. You're going to lose games. As an AD, as a coach, you're going to lose. And I can remember very vividly a very tough end-of-the-year volleyball loss to a big rival that we had beat earlier in the season, and it's to move on. It's the end of the road for seniors. and our girls are very upset, and our coach was upset, and very good team. And I just went in there, and I was talking to him, and I said, remember who you are, though. It's okay to be sad that this is over, but we are not that. We're not that game. We're not that game. We're everything we got as teammates from playing that game. So when you said the things you learned from competition, Aaron, that just really resonated with me. That means so much, and it's expandable into your future. Because at some point, you're going to go into college, or you're going to go into a job, and then at some point you're going to go into retirement. And so what can we glean from competition at that young age to show us who we are as people? I did core values, Aaron, same idea, but I'm a little simpler minded. I can't put things into just one word. And so I did core values, and I had 5 descriptors of each core value. And we, every year as freshmen, our freshmen would talk about those 5 descriptors of each core value. So we had 4 core values. I said it backwards, 5 core values, 4 descriptors each. Yep. And we just talked about 20 minutes. We did it through seminar, and we asked the community, we asked alumni to fill out a survey. It's very similar to what you're talking about, but I didn't only want my coaches in that. They took a big role, but I wanted to hear from our community because I wanted to know who they thought we were. And then I'm going to leave it with a question for the group. And so this is a little loaded, but in your opinions, this wise group of ADs and coaches, how often should you or would you redo those? And answer on your own time. But I that's really something in my mind that resonates. Is it when you're gone? Is it every 5 years? I mean, you certainly want to reinvestigate those, right? So I'm leaving that question for the group.
I would say this. I think there's certainly a time. I don't know if it's 3 years, 5 years, if it's when you have some, a certain percentage turnover in your coaching staff that maybe you got to revisit, like have the formal process again, and say, is this still who we are, or do we need to tweak some things? But I also think like this is constantly being revisited. If you're meeting regularly and you're constantly folding these conversations into your coaching professional development, I mean, your coaching development should stem from this as well. It should be about developing this. And so if you're coming across roadblocks along the way that, hey, this doesn't fit anymore, I would think you'd find, if you're really doing it right with your PD, you might find those places where you're starting to, butt your head up against the wall because this doesn't make sense anymore. Maybe we should revisit that. Does that make sense? I mean, so maybe it just might happen organically along the way, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, that's a good point.
I would think ultimately you'd want to see how is it trickling down to your students, your athletes. Is it resonating with them? And use that as a barometer of when you need to reinvestigate and retool what you're doing.
Yep. Brian, I appreciate your thoughts on that, and I really like the idea. I liked how you folded the student athlete experience into that, so you can bring that to your coaches and say, this is what our alumni said they took away as well, and fold that into being part of that development. So that's a great idea. I got to admit, the old Gilbert Tiger in me almost jumped in the middle and said, when you said, well, you're a little simpler minded on that, but I let it go there, Mr. Rolling Story Norseman. I slid past it and moved on.
All right, that's well played. Well played.
Sorry, I'm running today, so I get to chalk last. So that's just how it goes.
That's good.
Mr. Gunderson.
Yeah, I enjoyed this, Aaron. When you mentioned what the topic was going to be, and I was really interested in what your process was, knowing what we had gone through as a school system here, and it's very similar. I thought it might be quite a bit different, but it was very similar. Now, ours was done quite a few years ago, and I'll explain maybe some of the differences. Ours for our district was led by our superintendent, and that's 3 superintendents ago. And it involved the administrators, some coaches, some teachers, and some community people. Some were parents and some were just community leaders that didn't have kids in school. And I'm trying to remember maybe 20, 25 people in the room when we went through these sessions. And the process was a lot like what you did, narrowing things down into certain areas. Didn't have a word cloud. Didn't use that anyway. I don't even know if we knew what that was back then, because this is quite a few years ago already, probably 20, I would say. And then anyway, we ended up with core values and belief statements along with our mission statement. And I think, so you'd have a core value and then a statement that described what that core value meant. And I think the value we found in that is we tried to make sure that those core values were evident in every department within our school system, athletic department being the one I worked with. And then each coach was going to use that and implement those into their program. And I think where you run into real value in this, and I used it as an assistant principal too. So I had this belief statement, core values poster on my wall all the time. And I didn't always use this with kids, but maybe some kid got a little hot water and, I try to figure out how you can reach the kid. And I just look over at that poster and I go, okay, look at these core values here. Now, which one of these did you let us down in and let yourself down in? And it would cause that kid to reflect. And then usually you'd kind of see their head drop like, yeah, you're right. I wasn't responsible or whatever. And I saw some of our coaches, particularly our middle school coaches, implementing these. I think of our middle school boys basketball coach we had for many, many years. There's about 8 weeks in a middle school basketball season, and he would take each of the 8 core values and have it a weekly topic for discussion within his team, and he would tie his basketball practices into that topic, and he was the master of doing that. And I know some of our high school coaches did the same, maybe not a week at a time, but they would find a moment where they could reflect or ask the kids to reflect on those core values. So this is just a wonderful thing. And I think our value came from the fact that it was district wide, and then expected to be used in all the departments. And then when do you redo it, Brian, to answer yours? That's a great question. I've thought many times, are we ever going to start over on this? Well, we never started over, but we reviewed it and tweaked it and did this and that. And I don't know if starting over is a good thing. Maybe. I don't have that answer. Maybe you guys would have a feeling on that.
I was just going to follow up on that when you said it was three superintendents ago that you went through this process, and it sounds like for the most part it's still in play. Yeah, I was going to ask you. So this has survived. So it seems to be upholding the test of time. There's still your core values. 3 superintendents led. I mean, so many times in the school, the superintendent comes in and it is, let's throw it all out and let's start over based on their beliefs. And it sounds like you guys have found a way that you did it right the first time. From a community standpoint, of this is who we are, this is what we're about, that it doesn't matter who's in the leadership seat, this is who we are, and this is what we're about.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was an extensive process. And so it's not like we just threw it together and then, the next person can walk in and throw it out and start over. I think each superintendent would come in and review that with the school board or with the administrative team, and they'd kind of land on, I don't know, this is pretty good stuff. I don't really want to change it a whole lot, but we would review it and, alter things just a bit. I can't say that I don't remember any big changes in all those years.
Yeah.
And I think it adds, like I'll go back to our middle school boys basketball coach. He probably coached middle school basketball for 25, 30 years. And for him to be going over this every year with those athletes, and I would see the kids that came out of his system, I think they behaved better in a lot of ways. Like you have the word future ready. You play for that guy and you're future ready. I'm telling you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And like I said, I think it stands that test of time. You did it right the first time and really got to the core of who you were. And that's what you got to get to for sure. So, all right, Mr. Jarvis, bring us home.
Well, I'm going to touch on three things that I think everybody kind of talked about. And I think that first one was just getting everybody on your team involved in that stakeholder engagement. So that's your students, your community, your alumni, and in processing and defining those core values, those beliefs, that mission, how important that is, and how strategic this needs to be. I think any school that doesn't do this is missing the boat, because if you don't have this, you cannot strategically plan for the future. To Mark's point, he said future ready. Like, if you don't do this, you cannot plan for the future, because to Brian's point, you got to know who you are and you got to know where you want to go. And you can't do that without having every stakeholder involved in that. So number one, I heard that today. Number two, I think there's something to be said for, I think there's a lot of times we go through this process and it's a small group and it's not a shared vision. And that leads back to the importance of having those stakeholders involved. And so at Newton, we brought all of our coaches. We did the surveys with alumni. We did the surveys with, our community. And then we brought our kids and coaches together and we talked about that. Mm-hmm. And, you pose the question, Brian, which I think is a great question. When do you change that? Just like a strategic plan, your mission and your vision and your core values need to be a living, breathing thing that you're living every day. So how important it is that, Mark, you said it, when we hold kids accountable, we show them, we bring them back to our core values, our mission, our vision. When we're trying to make decisions in our everyday lives as AD, does it lead us to our mission, vision, and core values? And that clarity and that alignment, and we have to ask those tough questions, Aaron, like you said. Why are we doing this? What are we doing this for? And who are we doing it? And why are we doing it? And then at the end of the day, the last thing is just that communication. Sharing that mission, sharing that vision, making sure that it's ingrained in our team culture, not only in our individual teams, but as an athletic department. And we're sharing that out as many times as possible. I go back to Joey going through that 3D process, which we went through, which was absolutely amazing. And for our coaches to understand their transformational purpose, and then how that fit into our overall mission, vision, and core values was so important. And at the end of the day, that time that you spend as an athletic director working with your coaches creates that culture that you want, and that communication and that sharing of, all the things that we struggle with in being a coach or an athletic director, that brings this all together. So I think there's definitely something to be said for, when you have a mission, vision, core values, you need to be constantly working on whatever those are and using that in your professional development, making sure that you're referring back to it in everything that you do, decision-making, professional development, evaluation, how you hire coaches is so important. And, again, share your story, share what you're about, share who you're about.
Good stuff there, Scott. Good stuff. The one thing, I'll wrap this up with these thoughts, I guess. Because as I listen to all four of you talk, and Mr. Peterson, I'll let you go first if you wanted.
Sorry, I don't want to wrap it up, so I'm going to give it to you to wrap up. But Scott got me going down a path, of course, just of how to put this into action. The one thing that I would offer for a suggestion through learning of what I did. When I told our coaches, here's our core values, here's our descriptors, I want you to write one or two statements for your team, what that actually looks like. So what does pride in yourself look like for your football team? And man alive, yeah, Scott's got it right there. That really changed. And again, my simple mindset, I need that. I had to actually think through, what does that look like on a bus trip going down to Gilbert? Yeah. What does that look like? So just one little action piece there at the tail end. Scott, thanks for getting me down there.
Yeah,
And
so
I'm
that's-
fired up. I want to go do it. Let's go.
you're stealing my thunder there, Pearson, but I love it. It's a great segue into, like I said, when I come up next time, that's what we're going to get into is, okay, great. You got this vision, you got this mission, you got these core values. Now what? And so we'll have that discussion if, I love that, Brian, and you're right. It's the, now what with it? And so that is my plan next time, is to get into the, what's this look like? How do you teach it within your program? So we'll absolutely jump into that because, to finish up your point there, if all you do is have a vision and mission meeting and core value meeting and then put a poster on the wall and that's it, then you've wasted your time, their time, and it never comes to life. So that'll be what we'll get into the next time as well with this. So Brian, hold that thought, and I'll collaborate with you on the next one. So the one thing I was going to wrap this up with, and you heard everybody talking about this, and one of the most important pieces of this, and if you're sitting out there and say, well, do I have to do this? Or are we already there? First of all, if you don't know, I'd say go through this process. Second of all, if you feel like you have a disjointed athletic department, you've got this set of coaches over here doing their thing and this set of coaches over here doing their thing, and there's not a lot of collaboration or sync between them, then this is a process you want to go through with your team. I'm an old science teacher, so I got to be a science geek for a second. I think about magnets. And when something becomes magnetized, so everything out there has domains within it, these domains of energy, right? And in an unmagnetized object, all those domains of energy are pointing all different directions, aligned all different directions. Something becomes magnetized when you like, think about it, a magnet and a paperclip, right? And all of a sudden when a paperclip becomes magnetized, when you hold that paperclip up next to the magnet, it takes all those domains of energy in that paperclip and aligns them in the same direction. Now all of a sudden that paperclip is magnetized because it's all of its energy is going the same direction. It's focused in the same direction, the same field, and now it's a magnetized paperclip. Well, that's what we're talking about here, is taking all the different pieces of energy, all the people in your system who have their own energy and excitement and passion for what they're doing, and getting them all aligned together on the same page with a common language, with a common goal and purpose to accomplish what you came here to do as a coach and as an educator. So if nothing else, it does that. It does that. And I believe it helps you. We all talk about the multi-sport athlete or multi-activity student. When your coaches sit in a room and have these conversations and hear other people talk about the same passions, then they're way more likely to say, well, heck yeah, you should go out for wrestling. That wrestling coach has got it going on, man. They're only going to make you better. Yeah, but coach, I should get in the weight room. No, go out for wrestling because I know who that coach is. I know what they're about. I know they buy into what we're doing, and I want you to be influenced by them in the off season. Those are the conversations that start to happen when you have this common language. So great stuff, guys, as always. And appreciate your time. And for the rest of you out there, if you got questions on this, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us about our processes and what we went through. Thanks for joining us. Make it a great day.